Now, I wouldn't say necessarily that INFJs are pessimists by nature, but I also certainly wouldn't say that INFJs come across as optimists by nature. Um, Notice that I said aren't pessimists, but don't come across as optimists. And underneath this is the notion that fundamentally, I think that INFJs tend to be more optimistic about the future, about what will happen, non-defensive, rather open, unless they've experienced a significant setback, right? And by significant setback, that's also where you distinguish an INFJ from another type, because so far what I just said could apply to just about any other type. But to experience the setback, that's a universal experience that's going to be mediated by many things about your particular psychology, including your type. So type is a vocabulary through which we can bring more personification to the experience of a negative outcome and specifically a setback. In the case of an INFJ, with their holistic vision, with their tendency to be projected into the future. A setback, whether it's in a relationship, a friendship, at work, or about any kind of project of any description, the setback is always going to have a worldview dimension. The holistic worldview, precisely because it is holistic, is called into question by the setback, even if the setback itself is about a local section of an expression of the worldview. Of course, as an INFJ, you do certain things with a certain kind of expectation about future happenings. If things don't happen as you had planned, if they don't happen as you had planned in a major way, that's inevitably going to be a setback. But again, the local nature of this setback is going to contaminate the whole structure because the mental framework of the INFJ is an anti-holism, right? The same would happen with INTJs, but there are differences, of course. In my view, INTJs tend to be more pessimistic. That's a subject for a different video. Now, if the setback infects the worldview in that way, and holistic worldviews are always more prone to being contaminated in that fashion, from a local disappointment to a need to reshuffle the entire framework. That's why you don't see anything like that level of calling into question of the whole structure in an ENTP, for example. Because ENTPs have atomistic minds, not holistic minds. Setbacks are not calling into question the whole framework, because that's not how the frameworks are built. You could actually link this to the ability for the ENTP to launch into lots of different endeavors, to be very adventurous, and to not be, if you like, distressed or distraught and frightened into immobility by what they perceive to be a failure of the future to deliver on what they had expected. With INFJs, things are very different. And what that means is that the moment that an INFJ undertakes something of an ambition, there's a lot that turns on its delivering. And if it doesn't, then you can really get this kind of gestalt shift from optimism, the future will be all right, namely it will be more or less in alignment with my worldview, to the future clearly hasn't been in alignment with my worldview. This is a terrible threat, therefore I need to change the whole worldview toward a much more cynical and negative worldview. just so that I won't be hurt again and I won't need to reshuffle, because to re-update a whole worldview, although perceived almost as an existential necessity at that point in time, given the perceived threat, of course, it consumes prodigious amounts of energy. And so you can really sense the lives of anti-dominants, and not as much in the lives of other people, seismic shifts from what you might describe as an optimistic worldview to a very pessimistic one. But to begin with, the INFJ tends to start with optimism. But that's not to say that it will remain optimistic. And also, this optimism is rarely called optimism. It doesn't come across as optimism, to refer back to what I said earlier, because of the natural detachment and aloofness that the INFJ exhibits, which itself is only just an expression of existential alienation. Okay? Give me a like if you enjoyed this video, guys. Don't forget that I've written 2 books on this beautiful type called the INFJ. The Ecstatic Soul, my first book on the INFJ, and still to date, the deepest investigation into the INFJ mind. Link is below, as well as my latest book on the INFJ, guys, The Infinite Soul, second book in the Soul series on INFJ life in the modern world, how to find happiness, purpose, and value in a world that is often hostile to INFJs. And also don't forget that I benefit hugely from your kind support on Patreon. Please consider supporting me. I need you more than ever. I could not do it without you. You get access to cool perks like access to our Discord server and a bonus video every 2-3 weeks on a topic of your choosing. The link to my Patreon is below. See you soon, guys. Bye-bye.